Turning to a story making headlines across the globe, a discovery both unprecedented and controversial is reigniting one of the oldest mysteries in human history. For more than 4,500 years, the enigmatic Anunnaki have lingered in the myths, legends, and ancient texts of Mesopotamia. These beings were said to have descended from the heavens themselves, guiding the fate of humanity in ways that scholars are still trying to unravel. Among the treasures of the ancient world, few cultures captivate the imagination as much as the Sumerians. This was the first true civilization, rising out of the fertile plains of Mesopotamia. What makes their story especially fascinating is that their records do not present the Anunnaki as distant, abstract deities, but as flesh and blood beings. They wielded knowledge and technologies far beyond their time, ruled over humanity's earliest cities, and, according to the tablets, even tampered with the very blueprint of mankind. Now, more than 4 millennia later, new findings claim to finally expose the truth behind these so-called gods, the paradox of Sumerian contributions. Emerging around 4,500 BCE, the Sumerians laid the bedrock of civilization. They gave the world cuneiform, the first known writing system. By 3,200 BCE, they were recording laws, documenting trade, and chronicling the lives of rulers and priests. Their mastery of irrigation transformed barren soil into thriving fields. Their temples and ziggurats reached toward the heavens, and their astronomical observations hinted at a sophistication far beyond mere survival. Figures like Enheduanna, history's first named author, and Gilgamesh, the legendary king immortalized in an epic older than Homer's Iliad by 1,000 years, embody the cultural brilliance of this society. And yet, here lies the paradox. While historians celebrate the Sumerians for their laws, their art, and their architecture, their own accounts of humanity's creation and their dealings with the Anunnaki are dismissed, quietly set aside by mainstream academia. Still, archaeology continues to whisper their truth. From the ruins of Ur, Uruk, Eridu, and Nippur, artifacts emerge that paint a picture of a world both earthly and otherworldly. In 1922, Sir Leonard Woolley uncovered the Royal Cemetery at Ur, a burial site containing treasures like the Standard of Ur, lavish jewelry, and delicate musical instruments. Clear signs of a society steeped in wealth, hierarchy, and ritual. And within the thousands of clay tablets now displayed in the British Museum, the Louvre, and beyond, we find more than trade accounts or hymns. We find stories of the Anunnaki, those who descended from the skies, walked among men, and, if the Sumerians are to be believed, shaped the destiny of humankind. The Enuma Elish and the Epic of Gilgamesh describe a pre-flood world where gods and mortals walked side by side, a vision of existence that resonates strikingly with later biblical and Quranic accounts of an ancient age ended by divine judgment. To some scholars, these stories are echoes of myth, yet to others they hold tantalizing clues. Writers like Zecharia Sitchin have argued that the Anunnaki described in Sumerian texts were not gods at all, but visitors from beyond the stars, extraterrestrials who guided human progress and may have even altered our DNA. More traditional scholars, such as Dr. Samuel Noah Kramer, one of the greatest Assyriologists of the 20th century, stopped short of such claims, but still acknowledged that the Sumerians themselves were clear. Their knowledge, their kingship, their very order of society came directly from the gods. Kramer's translations of texts, like the instructions of Shuruppak and the Sumerian king list, reveal a recurring motif: authority descending from the heavens. Kingship, wisdom, and the codes of life itself were believed to be gifts from divine beings. Yet here lies the contradiction. When the very same tablets speak of commerce, contracts, and medicine, they are accepted as fact. When they speak of the Anunnaki, they are dismissed as legend. This selective interpretation raises uncomfortable questions. Why do we accept their laws, but ignore their explanations of our origins? Why trust their science, but not their history? If the Sumerians were granted equal credibility for their cosmology as for their inventions, our entire view of the human story would be forced to change. Instead of a simple, linear rise from primitive hunters to sophisticated societies, we would face a far more complex picture, one that suggests humanity may not have advanced alone. Recent genetic research has already begun to challenge the old narrative. Studies led by scientists such as Dr. Robert Schalk and Dr. David Reich have revealed surprising layers in our ancestry, including genetic admixtures that do not neatly align with the conventional timeline of human evolution. These findings open the door to possibilities once unthinkable. Discoveries such as Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, dated to around 9,600 BCE, prove that advanced human activity existed thousands of years before mainstream history allows. Its megalithic structures, carved with precision at a time when humans were thought to be simple foragers, seem to echo the Sumerian claim of knowledge descending from the heavens. The question is no longer whether the ancients were advanced. It is how they became advanced so early. The mystery deepened in 1840, when British archaeologists led by Austen Henry Layard excavated the ruins of Nineveh. While the site was Assyrian, the thousands of cuneiform tablets uncovered there carried echoes from an even older source, the Sumerians. Many trace back to Uruk, Nippur, and Eridu, the earliest seats of human civilization. Among the discoveries were 14 tablets, dating to the 24th century BCE, now recognized as the oldest known examples of writing. These clay records would forever change the understanding of history, revealing not just trade and law, but the voice of a people who claimed to be shaped by gods who walked the earth. Etched into clay in the elegant wedge-shaped script of cuneiform, these ancient tablets hold more than mere administrative records. They contain cosmological visions, genealogies of gods and kings, instructions for society, and even the earliest flood narrative, predating the biblical story of Noah by over 1,000 years. Works such as the Enuma Elish, the Epic of Gilgamesh, and the Atrahasis epic draw back the veil on a pantheon of beings the Sumerians called the Anunnaki, lords of heaven and earth who stepped directly into human affairs. Among these texts emerges the idea of a father of all beginnings, an abstract source of all existence, remarkably close to a philosophical concept of a prime origin, long before such ideas appeared in later traditions. Yet, when the tablets turn to humanity's creation, the story diverges sharply from the Genesis account of a single almighty creator. Here, multiple gods gather in councils, debate, and experiment. The result is not a single act of divine will, but a process, an assembly of beings shaping life itself. In this narrative, Adam and Eve take new forms: Adamu, literally man, and Tiamat, the mother of life. They are not sculpted in a garden by breath alone, but engineered. The texts describe the Anunnaki, led by the god Enki, fashioning humans by mixing the blood of the gods with the clay of the earth. Humanity is born not to dwell in paradise, but to labor in service, to farm the fertile lands of Eden, envisioned not as a mystical garden, but as an actual lush plain in Mesopotamia, a center for the gods' own agricultural enterprises. It is a startlingly different vision of our origins, one that feels more like genetic manipulation than divine command. And while many modern academics dismiss the Anunnaki as symbolic constructs designed to explain natural forces or legitimize kingship, the tablets themselves tell a more stubborn story. Phrases recur again and again: those who from the heavens came down to earth. The consistency across Sumerian and later Akkadian writings makes it difficult to dismiss these records as mere allegory. Adding weight to their significance, archaeology has revealed not isolated fragments, but entire libraries of these writings. Excavations at Nibiru, led by the University of Pennsylvania between 1889 and 1900, under John Punnett Peters and John Henry Haynes, uncovered vast collections of tablets, hymns, myths, economic ledgers, and creation stories. Among the most extraordinary relics of Sumerian thought is the famous Nibiru tablet, dated to around 2100 BCE. It contains the Sumerian king list, which records the reigns of rulers before the Great Flood, kings said to have lived for thousands of years. This astonishing claim echoes uncannily with Genesis 5, where patriarchs such as Methuselah are said to live centuries, blurring the line between myth and sacred history. Other tablets, like the Venus tablet of Ammisaduqa, reveal precise astronomical observations, chronicling Venus's movements with accuracy that seems centuries ahead of the early Bronze Age. Modern scholars, including Samuel Noah Kramer, Thorkild Jacobson, and Stephanie Daly, spent lifetimes translating these inscriptions, and all noted the same continuity. Themes from Sumer reappear in the Hebrew Bible, in Greek mythology, and even within Hindu cosmology. Yet here lies the paradox. When these texts describe commerce, contracts, and harvest records, they are treated as credible history. But when they recount gods walking among humans, or kings granted dominion by beings from the heavens, they are relegated to myth. Kramer himself acknowledged the deep parallels between the Sumerian flood stories and the tale of Noah, but stopped short of suggesting the Anunnaki were real entities. Still, the parallels cannot be ignored. Even the Hebrew term Elohim, typically translated as God, is in fact plural, suggesting a council or assembly, much like the Sumerian Anunnaki. Could the streamlined monotheism of later religions have been a deliberate simplification of a far older, more complex theology? Context matters. The Sumerian tablets were unearthed in the 19th century, at a time when Western society was steeped in biblical orthodoxy and new sciences like archaeology were being used to validate a particular view of history, one of linear human progress, exceptionalism, and a single transcendent deity. Narratives that suggested multiple divine beings or humanity, engineered by outsiders, did not fit neatly into that framework, and so they were minimized. But the tablets themselves whisper a more unsettling story. According to the Enuma Elish and the Atrahasis epic, the Anunnaki were not distant abstractions, but powerful, technologically advanced beings who descended to Earth from a celestial home they called Nibiru. Their arrival, dated in the myths to around 445,000 years ago, marks a turning point in humanity's story. The very name Anunnaki translates as those who from heaven to earth came, and in the texts, they are not solitary gods, but a collective, led by Anu, the sky father and sovereign, Enlil, lord of the air and authority, and Enki, the keeper of wisdom and waters, often portrayed as humanity's protector. Modern interpretations, most famously advanced by Zecharia Sitchin in The 12th Planet, 1976, suggest that Nibiru is not metaphorical, but a distant planet in our solar system, with an elongated orbit that brings it into the inner solar system every 3,600 years. According to these readings, the Anunnaki faced a planetary crisis. Nibiru's atmosphere was collapsing. Their solution was audacious: infuse it with finely dispersed gold particles to form a reflective shield. Strikingly, this idea aligns with modern science, where gold's unique reflective and conductive properties make it indispensable in space technology today, from coating spacecraft to forming the mirrors of the James Webb Space Telescope. The Sumerian obsession with gold gains new significance in this light. Excavations at Ur's royal tombs in the 1920s by Leonard Woolley revealed unimaginable treasures: gold crowns, jewelry, weapons, and ritual objects, dating back to the 3rd millennium BCE. The sheer abundance and craftsmanship suggest that gold was more than a symbol of wealth. It may have carried cosmic or even extraterrestrial significance. The tablets also speak of the Abzu, a realm associated with Enki, often described as underground or beneath the waters. In these writings, it is portrayed as a site of resource extraction. The Atrahasis epic, dated to the 17th century BCE, describes a revolt among the Anunnaki laborers, exhausted from digging for gold. Their rebellion forced Enki and the Council of Gods to devise a radical solution, the creation of the Lulu, a mixed being. This prototype human was designed to bear the burden of labor in their place. This act of human creation, described in the tablets as a fusion of Anunnaki essence and earthly clay, resonates uncannily with the biblical Adam and anticipates modern debates about genetic engineering. Mainstream scholars like Thorkild Jacobson insist these were symbolic stories, poetic metaphors for the human condition. The story of the Great Flood. According to Sumerian lore, and its later retellings in Akkadian and Hebrew, follows a vast elliptical orbit that sweeps near the inner solar system, roughly every 3,600 years. Modern scholarship dates the Mesopotamian flood to roughly 2,900 BCE, when archaeological strata across the Near East show widespread inundation and abrupt cultural upheaval. Ancient texts describe ominous astronomical signs in the years before: strange sunspot activity, surging solar flares, and a flickering magnetic field. These disturbances were said to heat the world, melt polar ice, and swell the seas. Then, the torrents came. Earth's order collapsed into chaos, as though the heavens themselves had opened. Geological records lend credibility to the ancient flood accounts. Ice core samples drilled from Greenland and Antarctica reveal sudden climatic swings and elevated levels of atmospheric dust and radiation around the same era. These findings align with dramatic sea level changes that would have devastated low-lying regions, drowning entire settlements, and leaving behind the kind of chaos immortalized in myth. In the Sumerian Atrahasis epic, Enlil, weary of humanity's noise, rebellion, and unchecked growth, resolved upon a terrible solution: a flood that would cleanse the earth of its disobedient creations. The decision was ruthless, a divine purge to restore balance. Yet not all the Anunnaki agreed. Enki, humanity's secret protector, whispered warnings to Atrahasis, a righteous man chosen to survive. In hushed words carried through a reed wall, Enki instructed him to build a vast vessel, sealed with pitch, stocked with provisions, and filled with all manner of living creatures. When the appointed day arrived, the heavens wept torrents. The rivers swelled beyond their banks, and the fury of the storm blotted out the sun. For 6 days and 7 nights, waters raged across the land. Cities crumbled, temples were swept away, and the cries of mortals were drowned in silence. Then, at last, the winds ceased, and the waters receded. Atrahasis emerged from his ark upon the mountainside, offering a sacrifice that filled the air with smoke. The scent reached the nostrils of the gods, who, according to the tale, gathered like flies, lamenting the destruction they had unleashed. Enlil's wrath had nearly extinguished humanity, but Enki's intervention preserved its seed. This ancient story, echoed later in the Epic of Gilgamesh and the Book of Genesis with Noah, speaks not only of destruction but of survival, of the enduring spark of human life against overwhelming odds. And perhaps buried in these myths lies a memory of real cataclysm, encoded in stone tablets to remind us of humanity's fragile place between heaven and earth. If you found this journey into the mysteries of the Anunnaki, the Nephilim, and the Great Flood as fascinating as I did, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell icon so you never miss the hidden stories of our ancient past. The next chapter will take us even deeper into the secrets of forgotten civilizations. So stay tuned.